After living for over 20 years, through nagging injuries, through burnout, and even diagnosed with a heart condition, I've learned the hard way that getting ripped isn't about lifting the heaviest weights or living in the gym. If I can go back in time and coach my 20-year-old self, these are the 10 rules that I would drill into his head. And in today's video, we're gonna start with the most important rule. Let's jump right into it. Rule number 1, you don't have to lift heavy, but you do have to push hard. Now I'm gonna show you 2 different pictures right now. And in one of these pictures, I lifted heavy more in like a 5 to 8 rep range. And the other picture, I was lifting more like in a 10 to 15 rep range with lighter weights. Now, can you guess which picture matches the 5 to 8 rep range? Believe it or not, it's not the picture that I look more jacked in. It's actually the other picture. Because in 2021, I was diagnosed with a heart condition and I basically couldn't lift heavy weights anymore and I had to adapt in my training. Now later on in this video, on a few different points, I'm gonna share exactly what I did and you're not gonna miss that out. But the very overall point being for point number 1 is you don't have to lift heavy to, gain more muscle, lose more fat, but you do have to push hard in the gym. And I'm gonna really break that down, like I said, later on, so stay tuned for that. Rule number 2, progressive overload is still king. But here's the thing. I think a lot of us think that progressive overload is basically just adding more weight to the bar, right? Where in reality, progressive overload can be so many different things. It can be doing the same amount of weight for more reps. It can be adding a pause at its hardest with the same weight you did before. It could be slowing things down but achieving the same amount of reps. So there's so many different ways that you can do progressive overload, and it's not just adding more weight to the bar. Now, when I was younger, I never really did progressive overload that well. Like I was always changing things up. I was never really focusing on increasing the weights with those similar movements. And yeah, I saw results, but it just wasn't optimized. So my big takeaway, if I can talk to my 20-year-old self, is do similar movements for a long period of time, like at least 6 weeks, get better, get stronger with them if possible, of course. And you always want to try to be overloading that movement by either adding more weights, increasing the weight, or just kind of pausing where it's hardest or even slowing things down. So that's rule number 2. Rule number 3, don't quit when it burns. Now, there's a big study that took individuals through some exercises and they wanted to ask them like, how close do you think you are to failure in a 15 rep set? So they asked them basically after 5 reps, how close they think they are to failure, after 10 reps, and then around that 13 to 15 rep range, they asked them basically how many reps you think you have left. And here's what they found. They found after 5 reps that these individuals who were at least intermediate or maybe even well-trained, they found that they were off for about 5 reps. So let's say they did 5 reps, the person might say, I got 5 more remaining. They actually had like 10 more remaining. And then after 10 reps, they asked them again, and they found on average that most people were off by like 2 to 3 reps. And then even by the end of the set, they still kind of found that they were off by 1 to 2 reps. Now, I say this all to say that when it starts burning, a lot of us guys especially, including myself back in the day, we tend to just stop the movement, where in reality, we can push so much closer to failure, which goes back to point number 1. Like you don't have to lift heavy, but you do have to push hard. Like earlier in my days when I was going on my, heavy weight in my lower reps, I really didn't know like what failure felt like. But when it started going lighter and I knew I had to, push through the burn and pain a bit more, that's when I really understood, okay, I have so many more reps in the tank and I can actually push this a lot harder than I think. So your big takeaway is when it burns, keep going because that's where the gains are. And if you stop, you're simply just not going to maximize your results in the gym. Rule number 4. 45 to 60 minutes is a perfect sweet spot for training. Now, in my early 20s, like I used to work out at the gym like 75 to 90 minutes per session, and I got good results because I'm in my early 20s. It's easier to build muscle with more testosterone there. But at the same time, my body was always like beat up and I always felt tired. And I can tell you firsthand that my body now feels better at 35 than it did at 25. And the big change that I made was instead of focusing on quantity, like basically how many sets I'm doing, I focus on the quality of those sets. So before, I used to really do about maybe 24, 28 sets in a given workout, but now I slash that number to about 16 to maybe 19 depending on where I am in my training cycle. And the thing too, like if you're a guy over 30, watching this right now, this should come as good news for you because like, I don't know about you, but like who has time to like drive the gym, work out for 90 minutes, then drive back? It's so much more sustainable if you're doing it for 45, 50 minutes, maybe 60 minutes max. And the cool part about this, you're actually get better results, assuming your quality goes up and the quantity goes down. And like I said at the beginning too, your body will actually feel better. So your big takeaway, try to slash your workouts from, over an hour to 45 to 60 minutes maximum. Okay, rule number 5, before I get more to the tactical tips that I'm gonna share with you that's gonna really maximize your results, but rule number 5 is you don't need to work out 6 times per week. So again, in my early to mid 20s, like I was that guy who I did a push-pull leg split 6 times. So basically push, pull legs, 6 workouts in a given week. And combined with the point I just talked about, like think about that. Like I'm doing 24 to 28 sets plus in a given workout plus 6 times a week. Well, you can see why my body was absolutely run down and pretty beat up and tired, right? Well, the change that I made right now, like I currently do 5 times per week, but even speaking that, guys, like I would even say 4 is probably a great sweet number to do. I just have it ingrained in my personal routine doing 5, and I just kind of feel weird if I miss the gym. But if you only have time for 4 workouts and that's like good for you, I would say it's probably even the most optimal because your big takeaway here is like if you can't recover from the stimulus that you're putting in the gym, then it defeats the whole purpose. And that's something I never really understood in my 20s. Like I always just thinking like the more you do, the better. So like 12 sets for biceps, 12 sets for triceps. The more I do, the more muscle I'm gonna gain. Where in reality, if you're just hammering your muscles to basically no limits and you can't recover from those workouts, then you're just not going to see the result that you want. And like I said in the previous point, you're just going to beat up your joints even more. So your big takeaway, work out 4 to 5 times per week, and you don't need to work out 6 times per week. And if you want a sample week on how to exactly set this up for you, gym or home, I'll link it in the comments below and make sure to grab it and download it for free. Okay, as promised, now we're getting to a little bit more of the tactical stuff for the next 2 points. And rule number 6 is you want to add a pause where it's hardest. Now, this is the big change that I had to make when I started lifting more with lighter weights was I started to add a pause where it was hardest basically in each exercise. And I'll explain that more in 1 second here. But my younger self, and maybe you're doing this like right now, or maybe you've done this yourself in the past, like for me, it was more just like getting the weight to point A to point B. So if it's a row, I'm just kind of like give it like that. If it's a squat, whatever, I'm just trying to get my range of motion. I'm just gonna balance the movement up and down. But again, I had to adapt because of my heart condition. And the one big thing in my training that really helped me, and I'm not going to get into like torque and moment arms and all that sort of stuff right now, but it's just understanding where it's hardest in the exercise. I'll give you a couple examples and really hanging out in that position. So let's say in a squat, right? Like as you guys know, if you have like a barbell squat, you know you can basically stand in this position all day long. Assuming your back doesn't give out, like your upper back holding the bar. But if you're down here, like you're not going to be hanging out there for too long, right? So here's what I would do. Like I would get a squat with lighter weights. I would add a pause at the bottom, come back up. Or if it's a row, where is it the hardest of the row? It's the end, right? So I'm pausing here, I'm coming back. A chest press, pause at the bottom, come back up. And once you understand like where it's hardest in the movement, you can really use this to your advantage. And I guarantee you're gonna see better results that come from it because you're actually controlling the weight now and you're understanding torque, which I won't get into in today's video. And I guarantee your results can get so much better. So your big takeaway is if you know this, like if possible, try to understand where it's hardest in every single movement. Add a half second to a 1 second pause there. Your body will thank you and you're gonna get better results in the process. Rule number 7, control the negative. Now, if you're not sure what the negative means, you can use the word eccentric, but think of like going slow on the way down of a deadlift, or going slow on the bottom of a chest press, or going slow on the bottom of a row. Basically, anytime you're lengthening the muscle, what I really did was I try to really slow that down and really take advantage of that. Because I think a lot of us think that The only tough part, or the only motion that really is useful in an exercise is where it's hardest, kind of where I explained, right? And don't be wrong, it's great hanging out there, but we're actually stronger eccentrically. So when we, stretch the muscle in that lengthened position, we're actually stronger in those positions. So if you can take advantage of that, and opposed to kind of like bouncing the weights and actually like control it, and maybe add a pause to kind of couple what I said earlier, that's what the results are, guys. Like when I was younger, I just kind of went back and forth, didn't really care about the eccentric. It's all about lifting heavy weights and getting it from point A to point B. But when you understand these things and you know that you're stronger in that lengthening phase and you're adding a pause where there's most torque on the joint, which you don't need to know again, then your results are going to skyrocket. So your big takeaway is try to really control the negative. Again, it's not just half the motion. If you're just focused on one half and not the other half, you're missing out on so many potential gains. So make sure you guys focus on controlling the movement, even on that negative and eccentric motion. Rule number 8, there's no such thing as must-do exercises. So in my early 20s, like my right shoulder was an absolute wreck from playing baseball for, almost 2 decades at that time. And I used to think like, okay, I have to do certain movements if I want to get those gains. And so for me, the movement really hurt my shoulder, but I continued to do it because I thought it was necessary back as a young, naive trainer, was doing like an overhead press. So like this motion would kill me, like sitting on like a barbell overhead press, but I would continue to hammer away at it because I thought like that's like the king of shoulder movements, which I read like in a bodybuilding magazine back in the day. And it just kind of wrecked my shoulders even more. But the older I got and the more experience I got, I learned, okay, there's no such thing as like a must-do exercise. So like for me, the change I made in my shoulders, and I'll give you an example if your knees and lower back. So I couldn't overhead press without pain, but instead of just kind of forcing it as I got, my later 20s and even my early 30s, I started doing more like a landmine press. Because for a lot of us, right, like this motion might hurt at the top, but we kind of press here. We don't need full range of motion mobility, and we're still working the shoulders. Like, is it as good as like a barbell overhead press? Probably not, because you get a little more chest involved and the strength curve is different. But at the same time, I can lift heavy with it, like relatively speaking with my heart, and it's safe for my shoulders. And the same thing when it comes to, let's say, squats, lunges, or maybe even deadlifts. Let's say you maybe read that like deadlifts is the best full body exercise you have to do, but every time you do it, you wake up the next day and you feel like you're in a wheelchair because your back's like crushing you. Just modify the deadlifts, guys. Like do like a barbell hip thrust for your glutes. Do like a machine kickback. My big takeaway, I know I went on a bit of a rant there, is you don't have to do any single movement that doesn't feel right for you. You want to feel movements that feel good and that you can get strong over the course of weeks and over the course of months. So pick exercises that best fit your body. Rule number 9, change angles and don't be redundant. Now this is a little bit more of an advanced tip, but it still matters, especially if you're trying to get down to, let's say, 10 to 15% body fat with some good muscle definition. And what I mean by changing angles and don't be redundant, the most classic example I'll give you is like, think like chest, right? If you want to do like mid chest, I'm sure you know like a bench press is better for that. If you want more upper clavicular chest, more of an incline press and a low to high motion will work best for that. Well, when I was younger, I didn't really understand that, and I used to just kind of hammer home the same pattern nonstop, which helped lead to overuse injuries at the same time for my shoulder. So for my chest, for example, it'd be like push-ups, bench press, and flies. Okay, like all chest movements, but it's all basically this exact same horizontal motion for the most part, right? So when I understood, okay, let's change the angles up and we can hit different muscles that way, which obviously, I should say, which won't lead to overuse injuries, the more I did that, the better my body felt and the better results I got. Because another good example for your back as well, I think a lot of us do a kind of lat work where the arms are tight. But then if you understand, okay, if I pull a little bit wider, I'm gonna get more upper back, and you're just kind of changing different angles in your body. So your big takeaway here is you wanna make sure you are changing your angles up and not being redundant, not just for the sake of results, but also for the sake of not leading to those overuse injuries in which I just talked about. Rule number 10, know the difference between training for strength and training for muscle growth. Now, I'm gonna give you the most simple quote that's gonna help you understand this. In strength, you're trying to be as efficient as you can with the movement, right? Like you're trying to get a point A to point B without any energy leaks, like in other words, bad form. In trying to build muscle, you're trying to be as inefficient as you can. So what I basically just talked about in today's video, you're adding a pause at the bottom, like that's inefficient. You're slowing it down, that's inefficient. When you're training for strength, like you're not doing those kind of things. But here's the thing, like when I was younger, I really didn't understand that. Like I was trying to train for, aesthetics and muscle growth and fat loss and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I was more trained as like a strength athlete. Like I'm doing 5 reps with being efficient. I'm not pausing, I'm not controlling the negative, and I was just kind of ripping through it. And I'm wondering, okay, why aren't my results optimized? Well, let's just say case in hand right there. If you're training like a strength athlete, but you want to build muscle and lose fat and look more aesthetically pleasing, then you have it backwards. So your big takeaway is if you want to train for strength, you got to be as efficient as you possibly can with the movement. In other words, good form and kind of really lifting with that power. If you're trying to train for muscle growth and aesthetics, you're trying to be as inefficient as you can, which all the things I talked about earlier in this video. Now, if you want more tactical advice in terms of losing belly fat, because this is just talking about lifting weights. If you want more nutrition, which is actually going to help you change, and get rid of that body fat and those love handles, check out this video. I'll link it right here. And make sure if you want that free workout to kind of exactly tell you how to set up a proper workout routine, download it. It's in a pinned comment below. You can't miss it. Thanks for watching, guys. And please make sure to like and subscribe if you found this video very helpful.